You're watching Fugitive Red Eye, and yes, you read that title correctly. And no, this isn't a joke video. Hold on a second, hear me out before you get mad and click dislike and then leave the video. Now that all that's out of the way, let me go ahead and say welcome to another Dragon Ball video. I've done a few of these already. I've made it clear throughout my videos that my opinions on Dragon Ball are far from the mainstream. Most people consider Dragon Ball Z to be the definitive, best Dragon Ball part. I don't. It's third in my opinion. And that said, I plan on doing a couple other videos on Dragon Ball that are kind of related to this. I'm going to do one talking about the original series as well, and one talking about Super, one talking about Z, etc. And I do think that all Dragon Ball series have good in them. But you've already read the title, so you know what I'm talking about today. Dragon Ball GT is better than Dragon Ball Z. This is all my opinion, of course. But why do I say that? Why do I say it's better than Z? Well, let's get into it. First off, Dragon Ball Z starts out really strong. The Saiyan Saga is a great arc, and the first half of the Frieza Saga is fucking amazing. The second half of the Frieza Saga, however, drags like a motherfucker with one fight, and it gets really irritating. That could be said about many of the other sagas, but the Frieza Saga is the one that I feel it the most. It feels like it drags. Then you get, of course, the Garlic Jr. Saga, which is kind of boring, but overall not as bad the second time around as it was the first time for me. That said, one other thing, though, is in Dragon Ball Z Kai, they did fix this problem to an extent by shortening the Frieza fight considerably, and by completely removing Garlic Jr. altogether. So, you know, with that's fine. But Kai has its own issues, whereas I don't think that the Kai voice cast is ultimately as good as the original Funimation uncut dub of Z. Even though they are largely composed of the same people, I do think some lines and actors are better in Kai, such as I think Goku has better dialogue, even though he's the same actor. However, I think Vegeta has better dialogue in the original dub of Z, and by original I of course mean the one on the orange bricks. I know there's been a few different Funimation dubs, and a lot of them having the same voice cast actually. There was the TV version and the uncut version, which are actually two separate recordings. But I'm not going to go down that whole dub rabbit hole tangent in this video anyway. But I will say that there are some voices that I fucking hated in the Kai dub. Bulma, Kid Gohan, those are the two that stand out the most. Some are superior, like Frieza and Android 18 sound pretty good. But overall, I just feel like the older Funimation dub is better. I also think that Kai removes some of the good filler. There is a lot of filler that I actually really like in Dragon Ball Z. The Otherworld Tournament is mentioned in Kai to an extent. They kind of show Pikkon in a recap thing or something like that. But that's one of the best parts. That's a really good filler arc. But overall, today we're talking about Z specifically, the original Dragon Ball Z anime, and of course Dragon Ball GT, which is my second favorite Dragon Ball series, my first being original Dragon Ball. So the problem with Z is although it has all the best moments of Dragon Ball, all of the most iconic moments are from Z, those moments are sprinkled in throughout just much of the same formula that's just kind of rinse and repeated. And while by no means is that necessarily a bad thing, you know, using a formula can work. I mean, it worked really well with, let's say, the Red-Green show. It doesn't always, and when that formula gets kind of tired out for running for several hundred episodes, you can kind of lose interest, you know what I mean? Granted, Z's only 230 episodes or something like that. The thing about the formula goes as follows, right? A new enemy appears, he's stronger than Goku, Goku trains, Goku defeats him with a new transformation sometimes, other times with just having better training. Sometimes Gohan's the one who defeats it, sometimes Vegeta seems like he defeats it, but then he gets fucked over in the end because Vegeta never wins. Because Toriyama doesn't like Vegeta for some reason. And speaking of Vegeta, in my opinion, GT has the best version of Vegeta. He's matured a whole hell of a lot, realized that his rivalry with Kakarot isn't even that important anymore, and decides that he realizes he's not going to surpass him, and decides to just be a good dad. Much of Vegeta's role in GT is just to be a good dad, but then he later comes back when Goku needs his help again. Therefore, I think that the GT Vegeta is a much more mature, sensible, and better version overall than the Z version. That said, I do agree that his hair looks fucking stupid, but I love that mustache. One would say he's probably going to be a great chef with that mustache. But in all seriousness, GT Vegeta is best Vegeta. But anyway, the problem is that's all Dragon Ball Z is just fight after fight after fight, and they drag on. And there is some adventure sprinkled in it, like the first half of the Namek arc. I really like that. In fact, that's filler. That's not in the fucking manga. I love that part where they're on the ship, going to Frieza. I think the biggest thing is my preference just happens to be towards adventure series. And the original Dragon Ball has a real sense of adventure because the whole point is searching for the Dragon Balls and other similar goals. Well, GT goes back to that, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things. Dragon Ball GT feels just like Dragon Ball. It continues on with them searching for Dragon Balls, going on adventures, having the occasional fight shoved in here and there. As it should be. I think that Dragon Ball GT is fucking amazing, and I feel like I know there's a lot of people who have not seen it that just hate on it because it's cool to hate it. I'm not saying this because I think it's the majority, I'm saying this because I've met people like this. I know there are people who have seen it and genuinely hate it, and I don't blame them for that if that's their preference. But GT, I feel like, has a lot more substance than Z because it's not just a fight. A new villain appears, Goku trains, fights him, the fight drags on for 53 episodes.
Well, Caca Krabby Patty, we only have like 50 episodes before Namek explodes!
But, it's just, adventure, enemies, character development, and a really good story. Now, a lot of people may not like GT because they think it's goofier. Well, to that I say, you probably haven't watched that much Dragon Ball if you think GT is all that goofy, because yeah, it's comedic and lighthearted in tone, but so was Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was filled with all sorts of goofy moments. Remember when Oolong had that harem of little girls he stole from the town, and he was transformed into a giant demon thing? Remember, literally anything about Master Roshi and, everything he does? Remember when Boss Rabbit was turning everyone into carrots, and then Goku takes him into space and leaves him on the moon? Remember when Goku shoves Power Pole up that ninja guy's ass? Point is, Dragon Ball was super goofy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, there's a lot of fans that don't really watch Dragon Ball and just like Z. Okay, how about the Buu Saga? What about the Great Saiyaman? All the goofing around with Gotenks. Majin Buu being very childish and kind of goofy as well. What about Mr. Satan being just a total goofball and an asshole trying to take credit and just being a complete and total joke character? On top of that, look at Dragon Ball Super. It's loaded with goofy stuff too. Look at Monaka. Look at Zeno, although I fucking hate Zeno, so that's not really the best example because Zeno actually annoys the shit out of me, but to be honest, Monaka kind of grew on me when I originally didn't like him. I actually think he's a pretty funny joke character after really thinking about it and rewatching some of those episodes. But Beerus is a total goofball, and I love it. Beerus is my favorite newly added character to Super. So if you're hating on GT for being goofy, all of the series is goofy. Yeah, GT has some crazy shit like the Para Para brothers, but I love the Para Para brothers. They're stupid and funny, which is what they're supposed to be. I mean, think of General Blue. Think of Emperor Pilaf, which I know isn't exactly a fan favorite, but he's in both original and Super, and he has a small part in GT as well. And GT, I think, is a nice hybrid of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, because a lot of it is searching for the Dragon Balls and stuff, but they have all the Super Saiyan transformations, and they have the really cool fight scenes sprinkled in throughout, and the last arc is very much kind of like a Dragon Ball Z arc rather than a GT arc, but better paced in my opinion. Yeah, GT has its flaws, but so does the rest of the series. I mean, Toriyama does not know the meaning of the word consistency. You want to talk about Araki forgot? How about fucking Toriyama forgot? Do you know how many fucking inconsistencies, plot holes, and retcons Dragon Ball has? It's ridiculous. Now here's the part where things get spoilery, because I'm going to talk about the ending and a few other things. So first off, the ending of GT is by far the best ending Dragon Ball has had to date. Because Dragon Ball Z has a horrible ending. Goku meets Oob, runs off with him, and begins to train him, and that's it. He just leaves his family. He's like, I'm going to go train this kid we just met. He's the reincarnation of Majin Buu. I'm going to train him. That's cool. It's awful. And I don't like it. Granted, I think Oob overall is an underrated character, but he's just so horribly utilized in Z especially, I can see why. Oob has more development in GT to an extent, and he does become Maju, which is way cooler than just regular Oob, because he fuses together with Majin Buu, which also gets rid of that Majin Buu, big pink guy, which, I like that character, but Majub is really cool. Now, granted, Majub is incredibly underutilized in GT, but it's still a really cool concept. Other than that, in addition to the ending and Majub, there's also the fact that Super Saiyan 4 is just way cooler than Super Saiyan God. Super Saiyan 4 was built on an existing concept, because it built on the giant ape form and turned it into a new thing, with an evolved form becoming, Golden Ozaru and then eventually Super Saiyan 4. Both of those are way cooler than just, oh, God Ki exists now. Yep, that's a thing. Always been a thing. Oh, God of Destruction, Beerus? He's been there the whole time. Now, granted, I like Beerus. I like Beerus a lot, but that's going off on another topic. I mean, that's more of Super than it is Z, although technically Battle of Gods and Resurrection F are considered Z. They were redone in Super. Now, you might be wondering, why the hell did I do such a ballsy move as to compare it to Z rather than just Super? Well, everyone already compares it to Super. There's the people who are Super fanboys and the people who are GT fanboys. I probably classify as a GT fanboy just because how much I'm white knighting it in this video here. But overall, I think it doesn't deserve the hate it gets. And frankly, I think it deserves more appreciation, and like I said, I just think it's genuinely better than Z. The ending to GT, which I was talking about a moment ago, is in conjunction with the final episode and the movie, the GT movie, A Hero's Legacy. That movie is very important. Because if you don't know, in the final episode of GT, again, more spoilers, Goku leaves on Shenron and then is gone for 100 years. Because Shenron absorbs the Dragon Balls, which we'll get into more about the Dragon Balls here in a second, because that brings me to another point. But Goku riding away on Shenron, he's gone for 100 years, and then his great-great-grandson, Goku Jr., appears. Now, Goku Jr. gets most of his development in A Hero's Legacy, which aired between, I think, episodes 41 and 42, but it ties into the epilogue of the final episode. And I watched it after I saw the final episode, so in my eyes, A Hero's Legacy kind of functions as the ending to GT, although the epilogue to A Hero's Legacy is contained within the epilogue to episode 64. So, what happens? Well, after Goku's been gone for 100 years, he appears as sort of this, like, immortal ghost-type being, which I don't fully understand, because Goku, like, absorbs the Dragon Balls, and then he might be immortal, he might be dead, he might be a ghost. It's unclear, and I kind of like that ambiguity. But he appears to return the Dragon Balls, because part of why Shenron left was because the Dragon Balls had been overused, which caused the Shadow Dragons, which I'll get into in a second. And Goku leaving on Shenron, was him taking the Dragon Balls with him because he didn't want them to be overused and create more Shadow Dragons. So when he comes back, he passes down the 4-star Dragon Ball, which that is such an iconic thing. The 4-star Dragon Ball is the whole point of Dragon Ball. And Goku passing it on to his great-great-grandson basically is like passing the torch. And it's beautiful. I fucking love that scene. But other than that, onto the Shadow Dragons. The Shadow Dragons are the negative effects of wishes being overused on the Dragon Balls, each one created by different culmination of wishes. The thing that makes the Shadow Dragons really cool is the fact that they were hinted at, in a way, by Elder Kai in Dragon Ball Z. Elder Kai always said overusing the Dragon Balls is never a good thing, and abusing them will lead to consequences. Well, the Shadow Dragons are those consequences, and this is the only thing that you see those in. There is never any consequences other than the Shadow Dragons, and the Shadow Dragons are only in GT. That's what I have to say about the ending. That's all the spoilery parts. But, overall, I think if you haven't seen GT, because of all the negative, attention it gets, you're definitely missing out. Dragon Ball GT is one of my favorite series, and I've been rewatching it recently, and I love every second of it. And while I do think Dragon Ball Z is also an amazing series, I feel like GT is just a little bit better in my opinion. And again, some people will highly disagree with that. In fact, a lot of people will highly disagree with that, and that's fine. I think that your opinion is perfectly valid, because Z may be more to your preference. Maybe you prefer action over adventure, but I personally prefer adventure and character development over just non-stop action. So, that's just me. But overall, I'd highly recommend checking out GT if you haven't seen it because of this stuff. And stay tuned for the next Dragon Ball video I'll probably do in a week from now, where I talk about why Bardock is the best part of Dragon Ball Z. Anyway, this has been Fugitive Red Eye. Have a great day.
You inherited the blood of Saya people.
But who are you?
Huh? I am the Saya people.
What? The Saya people?
Yes. My name is Taras.
Taras?
Yes. Let's be friends.
Ah!
Take your hand off from Gohan.